Hello Rebrand gang, and welcome to episode 25 of Rebrand Everything. Today we're going to be looking at another rebrand request that was submitted through the website. I'm not sure who it was from because I didn't have a name field on the form, but I've added that now. But we're going to be creating 5 new logos for Sony, so let's go. So the first thing to do was look at the current Sony website to soak up some of their current vibe, just looking at seeing what fonts they use, how they display their logo, what colours they use and what images they've got, and just soak up that sort of vibe and general branding and identity that they're using at the moment. A look at their website showed this 3-minute video which ends with the line, "Sony's purpose, fill the world with emotion through power of creativity and technology." I looked up a little bit about their logo history as well, and on the website famouslogos.us it says that black was chosen to represent excellence and elegance, and the logo was produced to communicate strength and simplicity. So all of them things are pretty generic, but it kind of has to be because Sony offers such a broad a range of products. In 1981 it looks like Sony were gonna change their logo, and they did a logo design competition and got to the point of choosing 3 finalists, but then decided to stick with the logo that they were already using. That doesn't really matter to what we're doing today, but then I've just thought it was interesting. Okay, so this rebranding is going to be pretty difficult because their current logo is clear and recognizable and there's not really too much wrong with it. If I just had to clean it up a little bit, perhaps I would just remove some of the space between the S, the O and the N just to make it a little bit tighter, but that really is just personal preference, and I always like my type really tight anyway. It's just what I prefer. So I started out by writing a few keywords down and then developing some visuals from that. I kept thinking about sound waves because I saw online that Sony, the word Sony, came from the word sonus, which is a Latin word for sound, so I started thinking down that avenue. However, even though I liked some of the options that I'd made from that, I just thought some of the shapes were working quite well with the S shape. I didn't like the idea of it in the end because I thought it made it look too much like just a sound company, like a speaker company, or maybe even some sort of wireless network company. So I kind of went off that idea and started looking down a few different routes. So a few of the other ideas were like a ribbon to maybe show elegance and excellence. I mean, you're in that danger zone of making it really cheesy and really cliche, but I thought, just run with it and see where it goes. And it kind of is a generic logo, which is obviously what we're kind of going to end up with. But I mean, it can't be too specific because Sony do such a broad range of things. And then I also fell back on my old trusty first initial of the company name icons. I feel like I use this too much, but for Sony, again, I think it could work as they aren't just selling one type of product. I also had another idea about using a play button. If you incorporated a play button into the logo, and you could have some sort of strapline like play video, play music, PlayStation, as just like a play on words. But it probably wouldn't work in the real world, but I just thought it'd be worth mentioning. Sometimes I make cheeky little memes and put them on Instagram, so at Rebrand Everything, make sure you follow me. And also while you're there, just press the like button below and that will really help the channel out. Let's get on with this.
1.
So for option 1, I had an idea of using this super simple S shape, which is kind of looks like a sound wave, but it's not so much so that you'd think it's just a speaker company. I feel like as I was designing this, I just felt like it was one of them logos that felt so natural and like it came together so smoothly that it must have been done before. So I'm fully expecting the comment section to be, oh, that first one looked exactly like so-and-so company. I liked the way the S was looking going across the box, but then I thought putting it at an angle might just give it that little bit of flair that we need to make it not look so generic. I also like the way that looked because all 4 of the corners had a similar amount of weight to them, if you know what I mean. Like if you see on that one where the S is straight, it kind of looks like the bottom left and top right corners are kind of weaker, but putting it at a diagonal, it's all kind of balanced out a little bit nicer. Trying to match a font up with this was a little bit hard for this first option because when you see Sony written in any other font other than their actual logo font, it just looks and feels so wrong because the brand is so sort of ingrained into your mind. But then once I got over that and started playing around with a few different fonts, I tried some next to each other and I thought that the more condensed font worked, and I think that's mainly due to the fact that the top of the O is kind of like taller, and that kind of matches up with the roundness on the S icon instead of it being a perfectly round O, which doesn't really fit with the icon.
2.
So as on the rationale of the old logo, it mentioned it was designed with excellence and elegance in mind. I wanted to try and incorporate a ribbon into the logo without it looking too cliche. I started putting it on its side, which worked quite nicely with the text, but then I kind of had a second look at it and kind of thought it looked a little bit too much like a flag, which obviously puts off a completely different vibe to having a ribbon on there. I was playing around with a few different spacings and positions, and I thought smaller in the top right worked quite nicely. And I also think, although this ribbon is edging on cheesy and cliche, it does give a lot of potential for the rest of the brand. I can kind of imagine a black ribbon coming down and then the text running off of the ribbon, so you kind of use that as your holding device. I thought that could look quite cool, and I also think that that could become quite an iconic look over time. 3. So when I was visiting the actual Sony website, I noticed that in the little tab they have that little favicon, and it actually was just the S from the Sony logo, and they put that just in a black box for that tiny little usage. So I thought, as that was already in use, I thought it'd be a good idea to try and work that into another option. So by doing this, we're retaining some of the history and the recognition of the old logo, because you've still got that same font for the S inside the icon, but we can still then develop the logo further and use different typefaces to change the dynamic of it a little bit. 4. I'd drawn out this sort of zigzag S in the sketchbook, and the idea was originally that the cutout parts were kind of like triangle play buttons, and they kind of indicate forward movement and like entertainment as well. I also thought that when I cut the top and bottom of the S off, once it was built into this like big solid state, cutting top and bottom off kind of made it look like an arrow, top right and bottom left. So that might loosely symbolise their diverse product range and ability to move in many directions. It sounds like a little bit of a stretch, but I mean, it could work. So when I first drew that, I had a few ugly spikes poking out from all directions just because of how I'd built this using strokes. So I just rounded some of the corners a little bit just to get that nice smooth edge where I wanted it, but retain some sharp spikes in the bottom left and top right. And then because I'd rounded the icon a little bit, I did just make some small adjustments to the font just to make it a little bit more custom and have some of the rounded edges so it shares a few elements with the icon. 5. As the play button theme wasn't immediately obvious in option 4, I wondered if I can use it in a much more clear way for option 5. I used the polygon tool, and then while I was still dragging to make the shape, before releasing the mouse, I pressed the up and down arrows to change the number of sides. So in this case I wanted 3, but you can change that to whatever you like, which is really cool. Then I put a word mark inside this play button and thought about making it cut off so the word was like too big for the play button, and kind of thought that it was maybe symbolised that they're so big they can't be contained to one play button or something like that. But I didn't really like how it looked when I compared that to just putting it at a sensible size inside that. Spacing wise, I just wanted to make sure that the gap on the left was the same as the gap between the bottom of the play button and the descender on the Y, just to make that nice and visually pleasing rather than look like it's just been thrown in the middle of it. I think the play button design is a little bit in danger of looking like some sort of Netflix competitor or some sort of online streaming, but then like I said earlier, I thought maybe it could be like play music because they do speakers and stuff, play films because they obviously do film stuff, and TVs, and then PlayStation, which is kind of like a play on the words because obviously that's their games console. So this was a pretty difficult project, partly due to the fact that the Sony logo isn't actually too bad already, and partly due to the fact that there's no one direction I thought we should take. Because they offer such a wide range of like products, it's very difficult to sort of do anything with a double meaning, because it's kind of, you'd end up with 10 different meanings and it would just look like a mess. And my general style is quite a simplified style, so I don't want to shoehorn everything and too many ideas into that icon. And also, I think that a logo doesn't actually need to do all of that anyway. It doesn't always need to have this big hidden meaning. It is just one part of the full brand, and its job is to really become recognisable on its own, but that's over time. If you think of things such as like the National Geographic logo, that's literally a yellow rectangle that when they first had it, no one would ever realise what that was about. But then over time, and how they use it on the pictures to highlight the key points, and then how they use it on the front of their magazine and around the outside of the front of the magazine, it builds over time. So now if you saw a yellow rectangle on a picture of a tree, you would just immediately jump to the idea that that's National Geographic, and I think that's more important to make the logo something that can become recognisable, rather than trying to shoehorn every single idea into it and make it overcomplicated. So then, Rebrand gang, that was pretty much it for the process. If you like this video, please remember to press like down below. Don't forget to vote in the poll for your favourite option, and that's, you press the little I button up here, your options will come up, and then vote for your favourite. Then head straight down to the comments and let me know why that was your favourite and what you would have done differently if you were doing this project. If you want to submit a rebrand idea, visit rebrandeverything.com, and there's a form on there, and I've added that name field now, so I will be able to say who requested each and every logo. Okay then, Rebrand gang, I think that's all I have to say right now.
Oh wait, that wasn't all I had to say. If you haven't already, press subscribe and put the little bell on if you want notifications for videos like this every single week.
So here are our final options.